Happy Friday, July 10th to everyone. This is episode 8 of the Photo Geezers, where we're going to go into part 2 of environmental storytelling. And because this is the strength of my fellow photo geezer, Dick Yarmy, I'm going to turn it over to him at this time, and he'll start taking you through our pictures eventually.
Okay, good morning. When we were talking about storytelling, both Dave and I realized that one of the great storytellers of all time with pictures is Norman Rockwell. How does that relate to photography? Actually, Norman Rockwell based his pictures on photographs that he had posed. He would scourge his villages and the areas in where he lived in Maine, and he would find people, he would find costumes, he would find props, he would find everything that he needed to tell a story. And the thing that made Rockwell's storytelling unique was the fact that he could tell a story in one scene. You know, it's like the world's shortest movie. The interesting thing Dave had run into in helping with research was he came on upon an article written from a guy from a business school on communication, and he talked about just having seen a Rockwell exhibit. And it was most of the paintings in it were owned by Lucas and Spielberg. And they had referred to Rockwell as the greatest storyteller of the 20th century. And kind of the interesting thing about that is if we had to say are the great storytellers of the century, we also would probably include Lucas and Spielberg. And you'll see a lot of similarity in the movies that they've done and in Rockwell's work. What we wanted to do,
All right,
and
Dick,
because
Dick, let me interrupt.
Yeah.
I will include a link to that article in the email.
Okay, oh yeah, of course, thank you. One of the things, kind of a disclaimer, is that because this kind of photography is a passion of mine, the same way landscape is of Dave's, we're not trying in this club to force you into our genres. We're offering things that if they interest you, please dig into them. If they don't, hey, feel free to skip on by. We can probably get overboard on the areas in which we're really interested in or we've spent years working on. So please bear with us on that. Talk a little bit about Rockwell's ability to tell stories with one image. He worked kind of like a movie director in the fact using small dramatic moments of everyday life was what he was trying to portray. And he did this by having an incredible attention to detail. Here's a photograph done by Rockwell, and then next to it, you'll see the finished painting. And the changes he's made between the two are very subtle. They're, increasing the body language, giving more dynamic movement to some of the limbs and things to give the thing a little more life. You can see in this one, he's added another character, probably from another photograph. But if you look at, and picking up on the detail where he had the guy posed and then suddenly he realized he needed to be closer to be smelling the flowers on the corsage. Dave noticed the posture on the little boy and how he was in a position to do everything right. And you see in the finished picture where he's now holding her sweater and gloves for her. These details in Rockwell's work are what holds you into the picture. And you can see he started with a setting, kind of a stage set, if you will, the right costumes, the right props, the right body language. And what he's looking for more than anything else is emotion. When we look at them, because it's a few decades older, it's a nostalgia thing, but they always have a touch of humor. Okay, the question becomes, how does this?
I want to point out is that now I'll include a link to another article where Rockwell often took pictures and then painted from those pictures. So, and here's one of those examples in this particular slide.
And best I could study, he always did. He always made a photograph before. He started with sketches, then went to a photograph, and went to the finished art. It was kind of his workflow, which is kind of interesting. And because you don't ever see them published, I'm sure he shot many pictures until he picked the one that he wanted to do the art from. Question is, how does this apply to us in our candid photography? And it's kind of like you can only pick one. When you're doing candid photography, you don't get you can pick the setting. You have to observe the costume or the props or the body language. You don't have any control over them as he did. And as I said to Dave, pick one, and then when that gets your attention and you're shooting, then you work around that one. So what you're building really is a stronger observation. This is a picture I think I took. And again, the body language and the posing is what got my attention. Trying to make it more of a photograph than a snapshot would be including the handles and things like that, which happen as you look through the finder.
And the one thing that I would
go ahead.
Urge people to do as we go through this 7 or 8 pictures we're going to put up is, at least in my mind, as we pick these, I was looking for what I call the Norman Rockwell moment, and could easily kind of visualize Rockwell taking these pictures and making them paintings.
And let's look at a few of them, Dave, and you can point out, what grabs your attention, and I might tell you if it was one I shot, what grabbed mine. And on other people in the club that we picked, we can talk about what made us see Rockwell moments in that, if that's helpful. Dave?
Well, this is one of Dick's that I grabbed, and I could easily see this as a Rockwell picture, because one of the things, and if you look at some of his images, a lot of times the people within the image are actually looking outside of the frame, and in this case, again, eye contact. So you look at where the eyes are, and Rockwell used eyes a lot when in his various paintings. So he gets, obviously there was a lot of kind of New England homage to life in small town, but Rockwell did other things that weren't necessarily New England life, and this one easily would fit for me in a Rockwell image.
Yeah, and I guess in taking the picture, the thing that had caught my attention were, of course, the faces. But again, I'm not sure what they were looking at out of the frame, but I prefer in candid pictures that there is some eye contact somewhere else. If they're looking at the camera, my feeling is they're going to be self-conscious if they notice they're being photographed. So often as I'm looking in the viewfinder, and I'll often keep my other eye open because you can see a lot better without looking through the camera. And you want to get the people when they're at their best, which is when they're just not paying attention to you. And that tends to make you work with smaller cameras and with short lenses. You start pointing some of these Canons that they sell, I don't mean the brand, I mean generically, these big long lenses at people, and you're going to intimidate them.
This is a Marion Ward shot. And Dick, you want to make some comments about it?
Well, a couple of comments about this, and I hope I don't go too far in the technical, but one of the things we talked about was in a style of photography is ambushing, being ready to take a picture, finding something where you like it, and you want to create some mystery, or you want to create something to make people wonder what happened before the picture and what happened after the picture. And the girl's concentration on the seashells, etc., does a great job of that. And on top of that, many times we're reaching for very dramatic lighting to make our candids not look like snapshots. And here's a good case where overcast, or what's often referred to as open shade, allows you to see the detail and doesn't take away from the picture. The subtlety and the pastels you get in a somewhat backlit, open shade picture is incredible. And this is just like, I think the expression, Dave, is painterly. It's got a painting quality to it. You want to talk about the body language and stuff too?
No, I think this one might be a better one for body language.
Okay.
This is Sam Maynard's shot, and I could almost see this as the Saturday Evening Post cover going into the Masters. So, Dick, you want to
Okay.
talk about the body language in this?
Well, the thing that impressed me about this was especially the body language of the young man on the left, giving dynamics to the picture. It's suddenly not static. He's coming almost like in the old cartoon days. He's coming out of the frame at you. And to me, that again starts to tell a story. We're wondering, is he ready to get up? And it's a miniature golf course. Is it his turn, or is he seeing somebody doing something that interests him? It's mystery again. You get to fill in the blanks.
This is yours, Dick. This again, I could easily imagine Rockwell taking this and converting it. I'm not sure what details he would add, but there's a lot of story in this particular picture.
Yeah, and I think what got my attention was obviously the little girl trying to get her parents' attention, who were much more interested in their Dairy Queen at this particular time. But I was obviously sitting across and probably interested in my Dairy Queen too. But the way she's almost like dance recital posed, and maybe has come from something special by her party dress, but not able to get the parents' attention at all. That's why I took it.
This picture is Sue Jenkins, and I think you've probably seen it before, but at least for me, this resonated strongly in this particular time of social distancing and the story that gets told as part of this. One thing I would add is, and we were looking at this, and Dick recommended some cropping in it. We have cropped in from top and bottom because what it does is it magnified, as Dick pointed out, by doing that, it magnified the distance. So sometimes post-processing can further help you in your story.
And I think it's an interesting thing to keep in mind is that often when you're cropping top and bottom or cropping something, you're moving in, which you would think would make them closer, but it's the opposite. The wider the frame, the more distance that appears the subjects are apart from each other. And because to me, this, is something we'll look at hopefully soon, but more like in a few years, and remembering social distance, which is an important part of storytelling.
Okay, this is, I love this picture. This is one of Dick's. And just so everybody understands, this is in Italy. This is not the United States. But there's a lot of story that one can apply to this based upon your personal perspectives. So I could almost envision those two young ladies being two teenagers with their iPhones sitting, looking at somebody else and commenting and whatever they might do. So Dick, you want to?
Yeah, it's just that when you're shooting candids, especially street work or travel pictures, what gets my attention and what worked here is when you see people, when I'm all done, I can go back and have all sorts of philosophical reasons as to why I shot this, which is all BS. But what starts me looking is I see the two young ladies, the two Muslim girls, and I go, what are they looking at? And then as you pan your camera or widen your view, you say, oh my gosh, they're looking at that lady. And what they're thinking, who knows? But if you follow the eyes of the people you see on the street, you're going to find opportunities to make pictures that tell some stories. They may not be telling the accurate story, but they're going to tell a story, I
And
think.
in this particular case, what's interesting is if you look, their eyes take you over to the woman, and the woman's looking at something outside the frame. And so, you know, there's a story beyond the frame of this picture that you wonder about, which adds, at least to me, adds to the whole picture.
Okay.
So this is one of my pictures. This was actually my niece and her husband and my grandnephew and niece. And believe it or not, I talked them, me being the sunrise person, I talked them getting out of bed at 6 o'clock in the morning and go up to a spot that I knew was a nice sunrise picture. One of the things that you can have is, Dick does a lot of obviously street photography, which is more candid and catching a moment. This is a staged picture, obviously, because I got him out of bed and brought him up there. Although it didn't occur to me to do this particular picture until that moment. And I was able to position them in such a way that I caught the sun coming up over the hillside.
And the interesting thing to me was it kind of flies in the face of a lot of the techniques and things we've talked about with the Rockwell influence, is that you can tell a story and have an emotional moment and all the things that you're trying to achieve with attention to detail without seeing the costumes, without seeing any props, and without seeing any expressions. You know, here there's nothing but body language and the beautiful sun set rise, and then you've got the story. So it kind of says, we're talking about all these quote unquote rules, but there are none. You know, but feeling emotion through your camera makes it a lot more fun, I think, to take pictures.
But there's absolutely no question where their eyes are at.
Absolutely.
To the sunrise. So you have an implied look that's in the picture. This is another one of mine, and one of the reasons I included this in terms of storytelling, this happens to be the Jenny Farm in Vermont, which is, if you Google the Jenny, Jenne, if you Google that, you'll come up with literally hundreds of images of this farm scene. It is the most photographed scene in all of Vermont. There's actually a coin box nailed to that oak tree on the left. Or I guess it's actually a maple tree, where people take the picture and kind of give money to the Jenny Farm. In storytelling, we all have visited the iconic spots. And when I went there with my grandniece here, I wanted to capture a different picture and turn it into more of a story than just a landscape. So I had her go way down the road and run up the road, and had pre-focused my camera to grab a shot as she came running towards me.
And we'll get into techniques in a minute, but this pre-focusing is something that, as some people on the YouTube say, hold that thought, because it's worth talking a little bit about. But I'd rather save it till we talk about all three ways you can work on the street or in work like this.
Okay.
Again, great. The pre-visualization, which we haven't talked about, is exactly what Dave did here. You know, he had an idea for a picture, and then he made the picture happen. And to me, that's real photography, when you make a picture as opposed to taking a picture.
And I can see this being a Rockwell painting. So it is Vermont after all. So.
Well, yeah. And sometimes one idea comes out of another. Actually, there was a very dapper man, a Brit, with vest and pipe, between his teeth, that was walking this dog. And the two of them, look, I have a picture somewhere. I didn't include it when I sent these to Dave. The two of them, as they came out and he got the leash off, and they look like each other. It's the old dog and owner look alike. But when he tied the dog up and I was waiting for him to come back out, I saw the dog admiring himself in the reflection. So I couldn't really pass that up. Uh, so again, it's observation. You know, you see something about to happen and you just photograph it and hope that it comes out well.
So I'm going to go back to your outline. You were going to talk about some technique issues.
Yeah, and one that where it has some subtopics to it really is ambush. And what that means is where Rockwell was able to make a stage setting by the way he propped and put things together. You kind of do the same in street photography. You find a good looking arch, or I know Tom Maynard's really good at this, you know, having a tunnel and something to look through to get your picture. You find something that's nice, and then you need to wait for somebody to come through. But when you talk about ambush, finding a frame is an excellent thing to do. Another thing is lighting. What side do you want to be on of the street, or down, you know, it'll be northeast, south, or west. And if you're looking for mystery, you don't mind dark shadows and a really bright highlight area, and you photograph somebody when they come into that highlight, exposed for the highlight. And many times when you're working, it's just open shade everywhere, and you have nice even lighting. Then you just look for expressions and detail. And it's kind of like I said earlier, it's pick one. You can't do all the things that professionals do when they stage things, but you can pick one or two of the things that make their pictures special, and you can control that. You can control the lighting, you can control the dynamics, whether it's static or in motion. You can control when you push the shutter, probably one of the most important things. When the eyes are looking the way you want them to, when the expression on the face, what's implied if they're looking out of frame. You know, you want to, again, create some mystery in your picture by letting your viewer try to figure out what's going on. I think in the Rockwell sense, it's what happened before and what happened after the picture. The one thing on technical technique that Dave just showed you in his the running at the tree, pre-focusing. Once you've figured out where you want to shoot the picture, you need to focus your camera on that spot and then wait for the action to happen, waiting for someone to step in or waiting for whatever it is you're trying to photograph. But you should be pre-focused so that you're not fiddling around focusing, and by the time you get it focused, they've walked out of frame. With an iPhone, it's just putting your finger in the right spot. With our modern cameras, you got to kind of ignore the autofocus and set the focus manually on the spot. In Dave's case, I'm sure it was where the leaves started to turn the corner. He figured out that's when I'm going to shoot the picture when she gets there. Am I right, Dave?
You're right.
Yeah. It's just a technique, but it's something you really need to know if you're going to do the candid type stuff. The autofocus can really screw you around, because if you move the camera a 1/16 of an inch, you're liable to move the focus point off of where you are and be focused on the background.
So I'm going to include this outline in the email that goes out with the links, and obviously either myself, but especially Dick, he's the better guy to talk to on this. Be more than happy to have you call him up, and if you want to learn more and have some questions about what he's outlining here, this is Dick's outline. I'm sure you'd be more than happy to answer those questions.
And I guess the one other thing, and I think you were going to include it, there's 3 photographers I could think of just off the top of my head that do a great job at this. William Allard, Elliot Erwitt,
Brisson.
And of course, yeah, the master, Henri Cartier-Bresson. These are people that the human condition and humor, and in Allard's case, a lot of Americana. All you got to do is Google them and the word images, and you will get a whole page full of really good examples of this. And we'll put a link on the bottom of the outline so you can find it. And again, please don't feel like you have to get into this. It's a passion of mine, and so I have verbal diarrhea in relation to it. But and so does Dave on landscape. But it's we're sharing it. If it's of use, great. If it isn't, we're not going to feel hurt if you ignore it.
Yeah, what we always wanted, just more pictures that you send in. So, and I do have almost 50 pictures in a slideshow that will also go out with the email. With that, I guess we'll come to a conclusion on episode 8 of the Photo Geezers, and we'll see everybody again in a couple of weeks.
Thanks a lot.
Have a good day.
Bye-bye.